In March of 2019, archaeological excavations near the Templo Mayor in Mexico City unearthed a cache of sacrifices and offerings that may be connected to a royal burial site. The cache was found to contain many items known to be associated with the Aztec emperors and the god Huitzilopochtli, including animals, emblems, and the remains of a possible human sacrifice. Archaeologists have never found an Aztec royal burial, despite decades of excavations, but this recent discovery may lead to the first. So, today we're going to take a look inside what may be the first tomb of an Aztec emperor ever found. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, we'd be much obliged if you would leave us a comment and let us know what other Mesoamerican topics you would like to hear about. Okay? Somebody call Antiques Roadshow, because it's time to flip some antiquity. The Aztec Empire existed in what is today central Mexico, from about the 14th century through the 16th century. The empire was a confederation of 3 city-states, including Texcoco, Tenochtitlan, and Tlacopan. Ruled by a Nahuatl-speaking indigenous group known as the Mexica, the Aztec civilization reached its zenith just prior to the arrival of Hernán Cortés and the Spanish conquistadors. The Spanish allied with the Aztecs' enemies, as well as the general concept of pestilence, and eventually facilitated the culture's downfall. But even after many years of archaeological research, a royal tomb has yet to be uncovered. That is, possibly until now. While nothing is certain yet, there are several convincing reasons to believe this recent discovery may be connected to Aztec royalty. First of all, the trove was discovered near Templo Mayor, the holiest temple in the Aztec world. The Aztecs believed that when the Mexica people reached the Promised Land, the god Huitzilopochtli gave them a sign. Specifically, an eagle with a snake in its mouth perched on a nopal cactus. That's a pretty bitchin' sign, one that demands to be airbrushed on a van. Templo Mayor, according to tradition, was built on the exact spot where they saw that sign. Located in the capital city of Tenochtitlan, which is today Mexico City, Templo Mayor has also been described in historical accounts as the resting place of the Aztec kings. So you wouldn't expect to find the tomb of a commoner or even a respected soldier here. This is for the biggest of the bigwigs. Another clue is derived from a combination of Spanish post-conquest histories, which describe the cremation and burial of 3 emperors from 1469 to 1502 CE at the Templo Mayor. A nearby monolith bearing an image of the goddess of the earth and an inscription dated 1502 has led archaeologists to theorize that the offerings they uncovered were for the Emperor Huitzilopochtli, who ruled from 1486 to 1502 CE. Huitzilopochtli, whose name means water thorny, was the son of a princess and the 8th ruler of the empire. He ascended to power in 1486 after the death of his brother Tzotzocatzin, who was also an emperor. Huitzilopochtli was a great military leader who began his reign by suppressing a violent rebellion before going on a conquering spree that doubled the size of the empire. You have to respect that kind of efficiency. His exploits included campaigns that stretched from the Pacific coast of Mexico down to what is today Guatemala. However, despite his great success, his life was short. Huitzilopochtli died in 1502, after which he was succeeded by his nephew, Montezuma II. While archaeologists suspect the tomb may belong to Huitzilopochtli, only part of the cache has been excavated thus far, and more testing is necessary to obtain details on the sacrifices. However, the presence of this trove and the items found in it suggests the emperor's remains may be discovered later in the excavation. What items, you ask? Time to play What's in Your Purse with a dead Aztec king. The tomb contained some very impressive offerings, but one of the most impressive by far was a jaguar dressed as a warrior. The scientific community is in unanimous agreement that this jaguar is pretty cool. Jaguars were highly honored in Aztec culture and were used as a symbol of power and prestige. We're talking about the animal, not the sports car. The car loses prestige the minute you take it to the shop. Jaguars were associated with royalty and acted as a protective animal, or nawal, for emperors. Accordingly, the presence of a jaguar sacrifice indicates the tomb may have belonged to an individual of high royal status. Very likely, the emperor, Furthermore, the jaguar was the symbolic animal of the elite jaguar warriors of the Aztec military. The warrior adornments on the animal, which had its heart removed as part of a ritual sacrifice, may have been intended to convey the strength and bravery of the emperor. After all, Huitzilopochtli was known as a great warrior. As if ripping the jaguar's heart out and dressing it up in people clothes wasn't enough, several offerings from the ocean were also placed over its remains. These oceanic offerings included shells, coral, and bright red starfish. Incredibly, the starfish were plucked from the Pacific Ocean, which means they had to be carried a significant distance in order to be entombed in present-day Mexico City. You don't put in that kind of work to bury just any old jabroni. That's an emperor perk. Furthermore, archaeologists theorize that the marine offerings may be connected to representations of Huitzilopochtli, found in the tomb, as the sun god had to travel through the underworld every night as part of the sun's journey. Another animal offering was found alongside the jaguar, a roseate spoonbill, a flamingo-like pink bird that held symbolic significance in Aztec culture. The spoonbill, like many other offerings found in the tomb, was commonly associated with warriors and rulers, and it was included to represent spirits in their descent to the underworld. In other archaeological sites, roseate spoonbill feathers have been found adorning other items of combat or royalty, including Montezuma II's headdress. In addition to being an indicator of royalty, the presence of the same fancy bird found alongside his nephew's royal headgear is another strong piece of evidence that the burial site belongs to Huitzilopochtli. Among the more unsettling contents of the tomb was a body that was almost certainly a human sacrifice. The remains belonged to a young boy approximately 9 years old, who was dressed to resemble the sun god Huitzilopochtli. This was accomplished by attaching wings made from hawk bones to his shoulders. Creepy. That's the kind of thing you see in found footage film. The boy's heart may have been removed in ritual sacrifice, similar to the jaguar, but more tests are needed before that can be confirmed. In general, human sacrifice played a vital spiritual role in Aztec society. The Aztecs believed Huitzilopochtli was engaged in a never-ending fight against darkness, where the fate of the world hung in the balance. As Huitzilopochtli was the god of the sun, they needed to feed the deity with human hearts and blood to keep the sun moving and preserve the world. Those are some steep operating costs, but sometimes you gotta fill the tank with premium. The remains of the jaguar found among the trove had a carved wooden emblem of Huitzilopochtli placed on its back, and another of these wooden discs was placed with the remains of the sacrificed boy. Huitzilopochtli was frequently associated with warriors and rulers. His repeated representation among the findings ties in with the overwhelming emphasis on warriors and royalty in the tomb. As the blood-fueled warrior god who fought against the darkness, he was the intended beneficiary of the jaguar and human sacrifices. Much like the jaguar was covered in offerings from the sea, a jade bead necklace was placed on the boy's remains. The jade was brought from the area around present-day Honduras, a distance of over 1,000 miles. At the time the Spaniards arrived in Mesoamerica, jade was a highly prized substance in Aztec society. As a symbol of life and purity, jade was reserved for gods and royalty. In the same large stone box that contained the remains of the jaguar, there were also several other offerings, including a spear thrower. The spear thrower, also known as an atlatl, is an ancient device that propelled darts and was usually associated with the Aztec gods. In common representations of the god Huitzilopochtli, he is holding an atlatl. This is because in Aztec myth, it is the god himself who brought the tool to the Aztec people. And it was more than an instrument of conflict. It was knowledge ordained by the heroic god of combat. But nobody believes that when you say that about your canon. More importantly, the atlatl was crucial in the Aztecs' campaign of conquest. Unlike the macuahuitl, the obsidian-spiked club commonly associated with the Aztecs, the atlatl had mythology connected to it and was highly effective against both Mesoamerican and European enemies. In his account of the Spanish conquest of Mexico, the conquistador Bernal Diaz del Castillo said the atlatl barbs easily penetrated the steel armor of the Spanish conquistadors. Aztec combat was also rich with religious symbolism, and the items in the tomb likely tie in with other religious offerings connected with Huitzilopochtli. The Aztecs often captured enemy warriors in combat and sacrificed them to strengthen Huitzilopochtli. A separate stone box discovered at the tomb contained smaller items of symbolic importance, including a trove of 21 elaborate flint knives. The flint knives were decorated with mother of pearl and various gemstones, and had handles sculpted to resemble warriors. Flint knives like these, known as tecpatl, were used in Aztec religious ceremonies. Aztec priests would wield the tecpatl to cut open the chests of sacrificial victims so that their hearts could be removed and fed to the gods. The tecpatl was also a lunar symbol associated with agricultural events. The offering of flint knives and miniature weapons was accompanied by another emblem of Huitzilopochtli, made from mother of pearl, further emphasizing the tomb's connection to the sun god. Huitzilopochtli was tremendously powerful in the Aztec pantheon. Most of the Aztec creation myths revolve around him, and he was the patron deity of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. According to the legend, he avenged his mother's slaying by defeating his 400 siblings and dispersing them into the sky as the moon and stars. Sounds like Succession with a much bigger cast, like Lost, or the entire roster of the WWE. Another stone box discovered at the tomb contained a layer of bars made from copal, a resin Aztec priests burned like incense during ritual ceremonies. The Aztecs considered copal and other resins to be the blood of trees. Copal, which was sacred to the Maya as well, was also used in makeup, jewelry making, dentistry, and as an adhesive. The Spanish friar Bernardino de Sahagún, for example, recorded that the Aztecs would use the copal to glue gems to their teeth, which gave the Aztecs a several hundred-year head start on Lil Wayne. For the rural people who had been conquered by the Aztecs, copal was considered an acceptable tribute. Records from the era suggest that the resin was wrapped in corn husks and carried to Tenochtitlan in baskets every 80 days. Copal's importance to the Aztecs, as well as its association with their gods, convinced Catholic authorities to forbid its use in Mass. This meant that Catholics would spend the next couple of centuries importing frankincense from Europe. In fact, it wouldn't be until the 1800s that religious authorities would allow any Mesoamerican incense to be used in Catholic services. However, its importance to Mesoamerican culture endured, and even today, copal is used in Mexican celebrations on the Day of the Dead. So what do you think? What would archaeologists find in your tomb? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.